Welcome back again, Canonites. This week saw the release of Episode 7 for the Halo TV series, bringing focus back to the character of Quan and advancing the Madrigal subplot. I've been among the many waiting for her storyline to pick up some steam, and boy does it in this episode. As usual, I'll be comparing the episode to Halo's core canon, aka the games, books, and most other Halo media. Additionally, comparisons are just that unless directly specified. And with that, let's dive in once more. The episode opens with a flashback to 2 years prior, so around 2550. Quan, sporting a very different haircut, shows a little trick to a kid. The trick seems to involve burning a bit of the deuterium that permeates the ground and rock of Madrigal, giving the illusion of burning rock. The professor, one of the older freedom fighters from episode 1, introduces Ruben, one of the young fighters we met back when the series started. Ruben notes that he's from Castra, a region on Madrigal that in core canon was home to the Castra Arcology, birthplace of future ODST Kojo Romeo Agu. While Jin's generals discuss recent UNSC activity, noting that Marines have been pulling back and not just on Madrigal, referring to the escalation of the Human Covenant War, Quan and Ruben get to talking as well. The conversation brings out Quan's feelings towards her father's fight, and if you remember her desire to
getting off this stupid rock,
you know those aren't positive feelings. We then jump to the present, Quan driving deeper into the desert to meet the Mystics of Madrigal that we just heard about. Passing through a sandstorm, she seems to reach her goal. After the opening, we find ourselves on the rubble, Soren having managed to make his way back. We find the ex-Spartan sharing a story of how his ship went down after hitting a flock of quad wings, likely an attempt to explain certain recent events in a better light.
Incredible, what an absolutely incredible story.
It is, isn't it?
I love how Soren basically just admits the entire thing is made up. By the way, quad wings were an alien avian species that, in core canon, was mostly encountered on the Halo rings and Installation 00, the Ark. As the scene goes on, Soren continues to tell his embellished story, additionally mentioning being chased by broadsword fighters. Broadswords are one of many UNSC fighters, which are often named for bladed weapons. The broadsword first appeared in Halo 4. The scene closes with a brief verbal confrontation between Soren and his partner, Squirrel, the latter accusing the ex-Spartan of losing his touch, setting up for an encounter later on. Back on Madrigal, Quan meets with the alleged Mystics. Their group is seemingly comprised entirely of women, and they all sport white hair. I don't know if this was intentional, but it reminded me a lot of some early concept art for the cancelled Halo MMO, which depicted Forerunners as basically human but with white hair, at least in early concept art. Up close, we can see their outfits have Forerunner glyphs on them. The leader of the Mystics introduces herself as Desiderata, a Latin phrase meaning things desired, appropriate seeing as she holds things that Quan desires. Desiderata is also the name of a well-known poem by Max Ehrmann, which encourages the reader to find happiness in one's own life and accomplishments. Desiderata reveals that Quan's father wasn't the one who started this quest, Jin merely being the most recent to take it up. Meanwhile, Venture gathers his forces as he prepares an all-out assault on Quan once she's found. We find the governor of Madrigal quoting from John Milton's Paradise Lost concerning Satan's banishment to hell. Hell in this case being Madrigal.
Better to reign in hell.
Touché.
The interior of Venture's car has a Vicara GSMBH logo on it, marking the car as one of their creations. Though active in core canon since at least 2495, Vicara is only known for manufacturing the VK-78 Commando at the moment. Over on the rubble, we find Squirrel making his way to work, greeting people as he goes. It reminded me of Governor Venture's walk through Madrigal City a few episodes ago, though where everyone was afraid of Venture, Squirrel seems to genuinely get along with everybody. He's soon confronted by Soren, Squirrel immediately apologizing for his behavior the day before. To his shock, however, and I think ours, Soren merely wanted to hear about a job Squirrel had been proposing, as though Soren were trying to settle things between them. Swinging back to Madrigal, we get an above shot of the Mystic tent village, which almost seems like it was set up in the shape of a reclaimer symbol, though this could just be a coincidence. As noted by Ben Wild on my Discord, however, the center here looks not dissimilar from the icon for Installation 04 seen in Halo 3. As we get closer, we can see some intricate patterns cut into the tent's cover, which seem to be based on the symbology first observed on the Halo 3 map Sandtrap. Inside, we find even more Forerunner imagery. The walls are adorned with this Forerunner-like pattern, and above them is a figure that kind of evokes the silhouette of a Stratos Sentinel. In the back we find a comparatively simple symbol, 7 triangles arranged in a circle. These represent the 7 Halo rings. In the room's center we find a burning rock, the fire likely burning deuterium within the stone like Quan did earlier. Desiderata explains that when Madrigal was first founded, it was a barren place. One of Quan's ancestors went out into the desert to find water, digging a well and discovering the planet's rich deuterium resources, though that wasn't all he found. The Mystics have Quan drink what is probably some of that heavy water, possibly with something added, basically sending the young woman on a vision quest. Quan suddenly finds herself back aboard the Condor from episode 1. Following a quieter than usual Master Chief, Quan is brought to the Mystics' tent, now filled with Mystics and wrath from the rubble, where she has to fight the Spartan. The fight goes exactly how you'd expect, and seems to be meant to show Quan that her rage will not help her. Only by taking the Spartan's hand is Quan's vision allowed to continue. A now armorless John then guides Quan to a well, the well her ancestor dug, where she finds a man talking to what is likely a monitor. The monitor here looks more like a solid sphere than any previous monitor design, nor does it appear to be using the design from the recent Halo Infinite. Many have speculated that this might be 343 Guilty Spark himself, and while this monitor might have a direct connection to Spark, I don't think that's who we're seeing here. Instead, I think this may be a monitor assigned to watch the artifact on Madrigal. While most core-canon Halo installations were only given a single monitor, perhaps in the Silver timeline, Halos other than Installation 07 were allowed to have sub-monitors to aid the main monitor. Anyway, the man soon turns to Quan, informing her that the Spartan will return to Madrigal soon. As the man starts to walk forward, he changes, becoming each guardian of the well, Quan's ancestors, before Jin manifests in front of her. After a brief reunion, Jin tells Quan that the secret the family has been guarding is a portal, one powered by Madrigal's abundant deuterium, and one that won't be revealed until Madrigal is, quote, safe. As the vision concludes, Jin praises the strength Quan has shown, labels her as a protector with a capital P, then tells her to go back to where it all began. Now before we continue, I'm sure many of you have several questions about the vision quest Quan was on and what it all means. While definitive answers are going to have to wait, at the moment, I think what Quan experienced was likely a version of a geisha, a concept introduced in the Forerunner saga of novels. Written by sci-fi legend Greg Bear, the Forerunner saga were among the first Halo media to do a deep dive into the Forerunners. Among many new concepts introduced in the trilogy was the geisha, or gene song, basically a genetic gift from the Forerunners. And among the many gifts of this gene song was the ability, in core canon at least, to easily activate Forerunner relics. Geisha, or geisha in its plural form, could also hold ancestral memories and or instructions that could be unlocked when certain conditions were met. Perhaps Quan experienced a Silver Timeline version of a geisha. Alternatively, perhaps Quan's experience was related to another core canon concept, the domain. This may sound familiar if you've played Halo 5, but in brief, the domain was a galaxy-spanning repository used by the Forerunners, which could easily and instantly be accessed from almost anywhere in the Ecumene. The domain contained tons of information and records, and even had a will of its own, being alive in its own way. Perhaps these mystics have a way of accessing the domain, possibly taught to them by the Monitor. As a brief aside, the domain might also be the reason for John and Maquis' shared vision in the last episode. Additionally, Quan is now labeled as a capital P Protector, seeming to indicate this as a title like Blessed One. Whether this title is linked to anything more like a Blessed One is, or if it's a title bestowed perhaps at a Monitor's discretion, remains unknown. However, her job is clear. Protect the portal on Madrigal. What kind of portal this is remains to be seen, though going back to the 7 triangle icons from the Mystic Tent, I wonder if it might be a portal site like on Earth or Reach. The silhouettes kind of match. Whatever form it ultimately takes though, this portal seems to be how humanity will reach the first Halo ring in the Silver Timeline. The show briefly rejoins Soren's team as they raid a UNSC logistics freighter, the Bukovac, seeking military-grade slipspace engine drivers, so not full slipspace engines. The Bukovac appears to be new for the Silver Timeline, as does the Demkey system it's operating in. Upon returning, Squirrel and Soren get into another little spat, Soren's still upset about Squirrel undermining him earlier in the episode. I wouldn't be surprised if Squirrel attempted a little coup before the end of the season, but for the moment, everyone still seems to fear Soren. When Soren and his wife Lyra discuss it later, I noticed Lyra had this curved glass jewelry holder, which I found rather interesting considering that her homeworld was attacked and presumably glassed by the Covenant. Soren is also informed that Quan is still alive thanks to Venture tripling the bounty on her. Speaking of which, following her vision quest, Kwan does what her father suggested and returns to her home, the outpost still littered with Sangheili bodies. As she does, Venture's forces detect her and depart for the outpost. Venture also ends up murdering Agatha this episode, one of Jin Ha's generals from a previous episode. At the outpost, Kwan begins looking around, eventually finding a letter written by her father to his grandfather, asking about the well and the portal. Soren soon appears, having returned to keep his promise to John, though Venture isn't too far behind. As Venture makes his presence known, his goons begin arming up, giving us a clearer look at the unique guns they employ. Nothing from the core-canon, though with their own distinct look. Surrounded, Soren gets ready to fight back, but Kwan comes up with her own plan. Taking advice from her father received during the vision, Kwan decided to meet her enemy on her own terms. To do that, she plans to basically blow up the outpost and everything in it using the hydrogen pumps at the outpost's center. And to survive the ensuing inferno, the pair would hide in the same vault Quan hid in episode 1. With talks having broken down, Venture's goons begin moving to capture Quan and Soren. While Quan sneaks through some underground tunnels to get hydrogen flowing into the pumps, Soren draws the aggro as he hunts down Venture's goons in some great action set pieces. Additionally, the pair even stumble upon some hidden away money, allowing Quan to keep her promise of payment. There's also an installation, operation, and maintenance manual for an unknown Traxxas product in this scene. Quan soon reaches the manual override, allowing the pumps to fill with deuterium, and then heading for the hideout. At one point, with Soren wounded and a goon on top of her, Quan is forced to use a Covenant grenade to escape from one of the goons, and damn is that explosion satisfying. Though if I had to make a criticism, I would have liked to see that leaking plasma effect that we see in the games. Unfortunately, Soren takes a bullet to the neck from Venture, and Quan soon finds herself pinned. Luckily, she ends up finding the Chief's discarded assault rifle from episode 1, using it to make the shot on the pump. The deuterium inside ignites, taking out most of the outpost along with what appears to be Venture and all his goons. Soren and Quan are able to safely hide in the vault, though just barely. The explosion additionally goes up the space elevator that transports the deuterium, sort of mirroring the destruction of New Mombasa's space elevator. There's even a scene afterwards that looks like it was meant to evoke Halo 3's Savo Highway, the level littered with space elevator debris. After the fight, Soren and Quan go their separate ways, at least for now. Soren departs for the rubble once more, this time on his own ship, and Quan, now carrying Master Chief's assault rifle, remains on Madrigal. And that concludes the 7th episode of Halo the series. When it was revealed last week that the next episode of the series would be very Quan focused, I was both excited to see her story advanced and anxious about the execution. Ever since we heard about these Mystics of Madrigal, I was curious just how the show would tie them into the lore of Halo. And to the show's credit, I think they did a damn good job. Between all the Forerunner symbology adorning their clothes and tents, and the Gene song or domain-inspired dream, I'm very happy with how these Mystics have been handled. I suspect there might still be more to them though. I was half expecting them to be holograms made by Forerunner tech, so I hope we haven't seen the last of them. Overall, the episode was a really good watch, balancing character dynamics and interactions with world building in a way that's been absent from the Soren Quan plot for a few episodes. I am a little bummed about Venture seemingly being gone, though IMDb shows he'll appear in the remaining 2 episodes of the season. Whether he survived the explosion or is just appearing in some flashbacks remains to be seen, but I'll be looking forward to whatever else of Burned Gorman I can get. And with that, I think we'll bring this episode breakdown to a close. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and until next time, this has been Halo Canon. Thank you once again for watching Canonites. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, maybe even share it around, both of which help the channel. And if you aren't subscribed already, consider becoming a fellow Canonite and hitting that notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. Halo Canon now has a Discord server, which you can find linked in the description box below. If you like discussing any aspect of Halo's lore, well, that's what we specialize in. Thank you all once more, and keep on being awesome.